With all the chaos, high levels of uncertainty, how in the world are you able to keep your focus, have clarity of purpose, stay calm, and as a result, thrive? Today, I have for you a 5-step framework that will help you to organize your thoughts, gain clarity, focus, and as a result, thrive. It's a simple 5-step formula, not a quick fix, but one that you can count on. It's the very basic foundation we build on throughout the Silva Method immersion of Silva Life and Intuition system, and many of the tools and techniques of this world famous program that goes back to 1966, the Silva Method, builds on to help elaborate. So let's dive in now. And I'd like you to do first is there are many ways to apply this. Be creative. It can be your business. You could be starting a new business. You could be scaling up a business you have. It could be your relationships with a loved one, family members, your clients. Maybe you're a coach and you want to connect better with your people, or you're having some difficulty there. Perhaps it's just staying focused and calm. Think of what's important to your applications and with an emphasis on, as a result, how can we thrive through these challenging times? So, first step in this 5-step framework, there are 5 and just 5. And the very first, we call it in the Silva training, the 5 steps to create solutions. Well, I want to look at it and say, let's call it 5 steps, a framework to navigate the chaos, stay focused, be sure of what you want, be on purpose, and thrive. First step, and number 1, which may seem obvious, may seem like common sense, although it's not always common practice, is it? And when we're feeling overwhelmed, or when our body gets flooded with stress hormones and we're being triggered, it's not always that easy to think. So I truly believe as you apply this and do a little bit of the inner work, you'll find this to be a game changer. So number 1, first step is to acknowledge, to actually identify what you're dealing with, what the problem is, or challenge, or opportunity. It's a problem when we don't know a solution. But once you have a solution and then the result or goal in mind, an outcome you desire, it's really a project. Words make a difference. And very important is that we manage our thoughts, our words as we speak, and our feelings in our heart. And this is how this can help you do that. So you're not being negative. Too many people, I've been doing this work for the Silva Method since my 55th year. And as I've traveled the globe to over 30 different countries, and many of them I go back repeatedly doing advanced trainings for our graduate community, too often I recognize that people in their quest to be positive and live a more positive life seem to be afraid of avoiding acknowledging the challenge, the difficulty. When you identify a problem, that's not being negative. It's a necessary step in any therapeutic modality. It's necessary for problem solving. We've got to look at what we're dealing with and have full disclosure of the circumstances. It's important that we tell the truth and that we do this objectively and report like a true journalist, looking, observing what's going on, how it's affecting your business, how it's affecting your relationship, how it's affecting your life, how it's affecting your health. Tell the truth with no judgment, no blame. It's very, very essential. Good psychology to do this with compassion, self-compassion. Honor yourself and recognize that you're, like me, a fellow human being doing the best you know how to do with what you have available to you at this point in time. Not making excuses, but recognizing that. Because if we start to shame ourselves, if we don't have a good amount of self-compassion, we run the risk of making it worse. So yes, you're telling the truth, you're observing what's going on, and not making it any worse. And if we complain and complain and only complain, and if we wallow in it or ruminate, we're bound to what? Make it worse, because inadvertently you're mentally rehearsing what you don't want. You're giving it energy. You know this. Whatever you give energy to, is going to grow and multiply. It's also important as we're acknowledging, identifying, there may be some inner conscious, we like to call it that in the Silva Method, what typically we call the subconscious avoidance mechanisms, subconscious avoidance mechanisms that we all from time to time get caught up in. Because there's a payoff. If we're not dealing with the conflict, if we're not changing, if we're not changing the behavior, usually there's some sort of, well, we think, payoff. And it's not always conscious, but maybe the payoff is we're getting lots of attention, we're getting love. And maybe that's the only way we get attention, unfortunately, from family and friends. Maybe we think if I scale up my business, oh, I couldn't handle the responsibility. It'll be too much. You get the idea? So you could use a tool. If you're a Silva Method practitioner, you've been through the training live in person with an instructor, which is the absolute best way. I know there's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of variations online and condensed reviews or condensed synopsis of the program from people like Mind Valley. Great program, but it's not the course. It's not the real deal. There's a program being that's silvamethod.com. Our home office is organizing that Silva India is presenting for them. Again, it's not the complete course. It's not live with an instructor guiding you step by step for the most part. So you could use the dream control. We call it a dream management. You can put your subconscious to work while you're sleeping to help you identify what's holding you back. What are some of the obstacles? What maybe is the unconscious avoidance mechanism going on here that I need to identify, that you need to identify before you can take any action? So step number one, very essential. Acknowledge, tell the truth, identify, do it with compassion, no judgment, what's going on. Second step, you want to know what you want. Have a goal in mind, right? An outcome, and you know this, an end result. However, I have found that often our goals, even in my own life, they can be fickle. Today, this year, this is what I want. But next year, the whole perspective changes and it's not really for me. Sometimes we get sucked into the drama or the promise, the false promise of something. So I find what's really helpful, and I recommend add here, number two, your intention. Be intentional. Intentional means be the big picture. What is it you're working toward? What is it you're striving for? What is the contribution you want to make to your family, your friends, your business, your clients, to the world at large? Have that. And then it's much easier and more effective to be able to chunk down individual steps, goals, stepping stones. In other words, think big, be intentional, and start small. So the goals may change, but they're stepping stones building toward that. For example, one of the reasons why I'm here going into my 55th year is my intention is the contribution I want to make is to help people take command of their lives, to help people like you navigate the chaos, navigate the uncertainty, and not let the drama become your drama. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but there's just so much that we can handle. And if we get sucked into it and we start feeling down, go into a funk, maybe even become depressed or get flooded with stress hormones, it's nearly impossible to stay calm and focused and be clear about what we want, let alone be motivated. So have that big picture, what you want to work toward. Jose Silva, who is my friend, my mentor, who I trained with directly, he honored me by selecting me in 1984 to lead the charge, to travel the world. There were only four of us, and he was one of the four, conducting globally to our community of Silva Method graduates advanced trainings to work with instructors, etc. And that was a blessing for me because I learned so much and got a deeper sense of, boy, we got a lot of work to do, don't we? Our world is too full of conflict. And I do believe that as each of us gets a little bit calmer, a little bit more patient, a little bit more kind, a little bit more loving, and truly walks the talk, not just hypocritically say one thing and do another thing, which is happening too much today, That's what makes the difference and builds a better, more loving, harmonious community. So, what is it that you want? Connect with your purpose or the contribution, perhaps, that you want to make. Everybody plays a part. I have met more service wait staff. They're on purpose. They love doing that work. It's not easy. I know a bus driver in downtown Chicago. She loves it. She said, "This is my purpose. People count on me to get them safely across town." It helps also when you're working on your intention, is to look at your future self, so to speak. Think ahead, think long term. Yes, be mindfully present, sure. Be present in the moment, absolutely. And have a vision of your future next month, next year, 5 years, 10 years from now. Looking at the big picture, your intention. What would it be like in 5 years if your best self has emerged in all that you do? And when you do that, you can't help but feel hopeful and optimistic. And when you're in a state of hope and optimism, you're more likely to access higher thinking functions of your brain and your intuition. And quite frankly, you've got everything you need. You're far more powerful than you realize. That's a message I hear so many people reminding us about. It's true. It's true. It's just that sometimes we get stuck for different reasons. Sometimes we get overloaded with stress hormones, and then we go into scarcity consciousness, and that blocks us. So be clear about your values, who or what's important to you, and make sure that your actions are consistent with your values. I no longer listen to what people tell me they're going to do and how great they are. I look at their actions. I look at what they're doing. Anybody can talk a good game. Can you relate? Number three, got to have a plan, right? Strategies. One of the observations I made as I traveled the world is that in their quest again to be positive, to use the tools, to love, that wonderful meditative experience where your body tingles, you're in homeostasis or balance. It's a wonderful feeling. It's a positive addiction. However, they lose sight that we're not just a mind, we're not just a spirit, we also have a body. We also have an objective mode of consciousness, logic, reasoning. We need to be able to monetize our intention. We need to be able to sustain it, whatever it is. And that takes a collaboration between our body, our objective reality, our logic, reasoning, etc., and our spirit, our soul, our inner conscious. Yes, I do believe that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. However, as long as we're on this planet living for this very short period of time, the more we can collaborate between the two, the more successful you are, the more effective. Yeah. So you gotta have a plan, a strategy. It's important that we activate our potential to allow our best self to emerge. And we can do that by having an organized plan. Some people find it very helpful to write it down, organize it. Maybe you need some more training to develop the plan. Maybe you need to hire a coach or a mentor, an advisor, a business consultant. Maybe you just need to do more studying. There's a lot of content out there. There's so much to study. Study the life and times of highly successful people, people you admire. You get the idea? So it's not enough to just sit back and yay, baby, and visualize. Yeah, I am making fun because some people have actually sold us, seduced us with this false promise that you can have it all. Really? Ultimately, that's true, ideally speaking, but do you have what it takes? And are you willing to pay the price? Not a quick fix, remember that. And part of the plan of strategy that's important is to have cash flow. If you're building a business, as we're talking about thriving, and you're on purpose, if you're on purpose and you're clear about your contribution you want to make, there's a saying, you never work a day in your life. And you'll tolerate so much more. And then you're not focused on how much money you're making, but being on purpose. And yes, we do need to have positive cash flow. We do need to monetize it, etc. I believe, and I've always lived this principle, it's secondary to being on purpose, having integrity, telling the truth, being honest, and doing our absolute best for our family, our customers, our clients, our students. So sometimes part of the plan and strategy might be I'm building a new business, or things have slowed down. Maybe I don't want to go into debt. That has been my mantra since I started in 1971. And there are times as a Silva Method instructor, I made lots of mistakes. I never ran a business. I didn't know that. I was so idealistic. And I found myself needing to wait tables. Found myself needing to load trucks for UPS from 4 in the morning to 9, then go to a restaurant a couple of hours later to wait tables. It was tough. I nearly burnt myself out, but it kept me out of debt. And I paid the bills while I learned lessons and while I did some studying and while I figured it out and was able to manage, because it is a business. I mean, it's a loving, kind business being a Silva Method instructor, but like everybody else, we need to pay the bills and want to live a life. So you got to manage your cash flow. Number 4, and the point of all this is nothing happens until we what? You know this, come on, take action. There's a wonderful Harvard report that came out from Harvard Business School. Oh, it's probably 20 years ago, as I remember. And it talks about, in essence, I don't remember word for word, it's rather long, but it was something like this. It's one thing to have knowledge. Yeah, knowledge is power. But what good is the knowledge if we're not utilizing it? You want to avoid becoming a consumer of knowledge and only a consumer. And I meet too many people, oh, nothing new here. And then look at their lives, and they're not growing, they're not progressing, they're not having a fulfilled life, but they got lots of knowledge, and they're very critical. Well, if that's your thing, God bless you. However, what good is knowledge if we don't implement, take action, follow through consistently with respect to that? I serve as the training director for the Silva organization. And part of my mentoring to our team of instructors, great team of people here in the US, by the way, probably the best instructors on the planet right now. These people work hard, they study, they implement, and they're doing everything they can to provide and facilitate an incredible coursework. Check it out. But the point about this is, you gotta take steps. It's consistency that makes the difference. You don't have to be the best of the best. It's consistency. When I look back, how is it that I'm here? So many people have left the organization. There are people who are my mentors I thought were far better than me, far more skilled, far more eloquent, far more articulate. Now I look back and I realize, but I never gave up. I was consistent. I continue to this day to ask the question, it's my action step. How can I do this better? What can I learn from this? Is there anything I can do that would provide a better, more meaningful experience that would reach more people more effectively? And I'd like you to do the same thing, whatever you do. So commit to learn, and also commit to unlearn the behaviors that are holding you back. Commit to unlearn the strategies, the same old, because if we keep doing what we've been doing, we're going to keep getting the same results. And have a hard commitment to that, and then to learn. It's important part of action is to be a continuous learner, and never stop having curiosity and wonder about the world. There's so much new research. It's an exciting time to be alive. Believe it or not, it really is. Mainstream media is not handling this, but there's so much great research. There's so much breakthrough in medicine, in epigenetics, in understanding how we work and how we can attune to universal thought, to whatever you want to call it, source, energy, the collective unconscious. But when you're in alignment, when you and I are in alignment, our lives work far more effectively. So we got to manage again what we're thinking, what we're saying, and what we're feeling. Very important. And last and not least would be claim it. Appreciate. So regardless of what your goal is, if you have a goal, lofty goal, but you only get this much, thank you. Appreciate it. The worst thing you and I could ever do is to say, oh crap, I could have done better. Because what you're doing is you're mentally rehearsing the mistake. You're mentally rehearsing. You're giving energy to shame. You're shaming yourself. Stop. Stop. Yes, of course you could do a lot better. Of course. Question is, how can I turn it around? What can I learn from this? The surest way to have more is to first appreciate what you do have. And part of that is you have your plan, you have your strategies, you're taking action, and then surrender. Stop trying to force it. Stop. And part of what this is, if when you are a learner, a continuous learner, that helps. If somebody is stuck and they think they know it all and they don't empty themselves and they don't surrender to the process, that would be like trying to take a basketball and putting it into a golf ball. Try it sometime. And that's unfortunately, there are people walking around like that. They're so closed. They're in this state. I find whenever I go to events, and I go to a lot of events to learn, even though I teach the stuff, but I empty myself as best I can and sit there thinking, what can I learn from this? How can I do what I'm doing better? That's part of surrendering, to allow it to happen, the process. And while you're doing that, manage your inner dialogue and be careful not to sell yourself short, not to blame yourself, be compassionate. So again, the 5 steps that you can use to navigate uncertainty, to navigate the chaos, to navigate the vitriol out there and not get sucked into the drama so that you have more grace, more ease in your life, you're in flow and you thrive, is acknowledge the way things have been up to now. Put it in the past tense. Acknowledge this is what I've been experiencing up to now, which implies we're going to change, we're going to improve. Second, be clear about your goals, but more importantly, be intentional. What's the big picture? What's your big why? Why are you doing what you're doing? Then it's easier to have smaller baby step type goals. 3, you got to have a plan or a strategy, a study plan, a mentoring plan, some sort of plan to build it up. Study success. You've heard people say success leaves clues. Study people who have it working. Study what's working and then act on it. Implement. Have the courage. It takes courage. And if you don't make it, so I was going to say fail. I don't believe in failure. It's a failure if we don't learn the lesson. So you got to take action and run the risk. It may not work. And then you readjust and you replan. So take action. And last, surrender to the process. Appreciate, live in gratitude and joy for what progress you have made. I trust this has helped. Please continue. If you'd like to find out more about the Silva Method and how we build, this is just a fraction of what we spend 40 hours. The coursework is 40 hours, meant to be the way Jose Silva created, and I'm his guy, helping to protect the legacy, live in person with an instructor who's certified and knows what they're doing for that. Thanks for watching. Until the next time, keep getting better and better.